Good morning. This is the editor's desk, and I'm here with Matt Keys, who is the chief cook and bottle washer of thedesk.net. Matt, how are you?
Good, Rick. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. And we've got some fun things to talk about today, not the least of which is something that I did this weekend that I absolutely fully did not comprehend and understand, but my grandchildren did. We went to go see a Minecraft movie.
hmm
Can we talk a little bit about why that is important to the business and the video and the movie industry and maybe to Warner Disco?
Yeah, I will. I'll preface this conversation by saying that in our pre-show, we both came to the realization that we don't know very much about Minecraft.
No,
I don't play the video game Minecraft. My understanding it's I think it's owned by Microsoft now,
it
and
is
my
owned by Microsoft.
understanding is that it's very similar to Roblox, which I also don't play, but we do have young people in our family, and they are about both franchises. I was speaking with someone who I regularly engage with for stories on the media industry, and they posted a photo. They sent me a photo of them. I'm not going to say who it is, but they know who they are at a Minecraft premiere in the United Kingdom, and same general sense. They were like, didn't really know what was going on, but the kids had a blast. It was a full theater. Everybody cheered at the end, and he said, and the popcorn was good too.
You see that? Isn't that always what we say about movie theaters? There is something more to that than simply calories.
Do you want to hear how much the Minecraft movie has made according to early estimates
I want to
or
hear.
early box office ticket
Yeah,
sales
sure.
in the U.S. and Canada? So it came out this past weekend. We tape these on Mondays, and so this goes out Tuesday. $157 million in domestic box office ticket sales. It's the U.S. and Canada, according to these are estimates put out by Warner Brothers Discovery. Globally, it's looking like another $144 million, according to the Associated Press, for a total box office of around 301 million around the world. To put that into perspective, granted, this is just one weekend. I think the Super Mario Brothers movie 2 years ago pulled in about 1.3 billion in global box office sales through its total theatrical run for Universal Pictures, which is owned by Comcast. So now Warner Brothers is having the same video game franchise moment. And my question to you, Rick, is this really a moment? Is this maybe a blip in the radar, or do video games have a real potential to be the next big franchise? We always look at superhero movies seem to have had a moment for quite a run, and now it looks like video games are having. So is this maybe just a passing fad, or are video games the next big franchises?
I've had a lot of conversations with folks about video games, including John Giegengack from Hub Entertainment Research.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to looking at video entertainment, whether it's television or movies, and frankly, let's just call it all the same thing, video games come in with a pre-sold audience. That's a big deal, okay? And a pre-sold audience that has lived with and dived into those games at least weekly for, in some cases, years. I mean, these are part of what people think when they say, I'm going to sit back and try to pull up little blocks and little square-headed creatures. Um, I think video games have a lot of legs, and they've always been the source of intellectual property for movies. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think if anything, Minecraft showed us, number one, that opportunity has not dried up. In spite of the doom and gloom about the entertainment business and the theatrical business specifically, that opportunity is still there. And God knows you go into any video game store or any video game catalog, and there are skazillions. That's a technical word, by the way. There are skazillions of game titles. that all you have to do is look at how many times the game has been sold, how many hours the game has been played, and how many individuals are playing the game. And you say, there's my next 6 movies. I mean, it's not a lot of brain surgery. Cheap, it's not. Cheap, it's not. But it's not a lot of brain surgery to say, you know what, I'm going to make a movie from a video game.
I'm trying to pull up how much, what the budget was for. So the budget for Minecraft movie was about 150 million. I did not realize until I was looking it up on Wikipedia that this is like a. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you saw the movie, right?
Yep.
This is like a hybrid live action animated movie.
Yeah, with
or like computer animated and
Jason Momoa, however you pronounce his name, from Game of Thrones and some other place, who turns out to be sort of a funny goofus, by the way. And Jack Black, who's a professional goofus, who now we know actually can sing. I think Momoa was one of the executive producers, which means nothing other than he gets an additional slice. But yeah, it's live action along with very sophisticated animation, even though everybody is square. And stories that completely confused me, but sitting next to my grandson, and he's not chortling. He is laughing out loud every minute of the movie. I almost had to say, Dominic, would you please shut up? He said, I can't.
Yeah, no,
that's okay. Everybody else in the theater was doing the same thing. And that's the theatrical experience. And by the way, FYI, you don't get that in your living room. That's right. Sort of an interesting model of exceedingly popular intellectual property, stuff that engages people the way that games engage people, and making a decent movie. You not only have a pre-sold audience, you have an audience that kind of resells itself because it reinforces. I mean, Dominic would go see the movie again just to be in that big room eating the good popcorn with all those people who are screaming and yelling about the movie. That experience is more than watching the movie. And maybe that's kind of the secret behind video games and movies.
I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it too is that the audience that grew up with video games. I mean, video games date back to the 60s and the 70s with Pong and Atari and Breakout.
Had both Pong and Atari and burned out my wife's father's old black and white TV set by leaving it on too long.
That's right. But sophisticated story-based video games really came to prominence in the late 80s to early 90s in my generation. And so now my generation is starting to get to the age where we're having kids, we're starting families, we've got, a good career, we're thinking about buying a house, those of us who can afford a house. All of a sudden, the video game audience from that story-based video game audience has matured. But video games are not lost to time. You have, you talked about how your grandson Dominic clearly very enthralled with Minecraft. Even if we don't get it, he gets it. And so it's one of those things where now it spans generations. And the reason why I brought that up is because as we're talking, it occurred to me that while this may be the big global box office breakout video game franchise for Warner Brothers Discovery, it's actually not the first time they've taken a video game franchise and turned it into a big budget breakout. I don't know, you subscribe to Max, right?
Yep.
Okay, so have you heard of a show called The Last of Us?
Yeah, I don't watch it.
It's coming back.
Seems too depressing for me.
It's actually really good. It's a really good series. It's if you're not really into,
I don't like the whole end of the world stuff.
Yeah, if you're not into the apocalyptic kind of thing, which I'm not, to be totally honest, I'm not really into that type either. But
now wait. In all honesty, we're in the media and entertainment business, and the apocalyptic future is part of what we deal with every day.
Or at least the semblance,
the possibility
of,
of saying,
yes, the possibility of it. I feel like we're all too often told that the sky is falling when it's not. But I suppose you can look for the examples of that wherever. But I bring up The Last of Us because that was based on a video game franchise that you can go on PlayStation or Xbox. I don't know if it's for both platforms, but I know we have the video game on PlayStation here, and it's been out for a few years, and some of the story tracks and some of it doesn't. I think we're now at the point with the second season, which comes out, I believe, in 2 weeks, that they are starting to divert a little bit from the video games. But this was a hit for Warner Brothers Discovery. They have a big star in Pedro Pascal. They're bringing it back. I think Catherine O'Hara is also in this upcoming
I think
season.
you're right about that.
They're pulling in some big names, and that just goes to show you that, with video games, we tend to think of video games and franchises being kid-based, and that's certainly true. It's true with Minecraft. It was true with Super Mario. It can appeal to adults if the story is there, and I'm sure there are some adults that have never played Minecraft that found the Minecraft movie to be entertaining. For me, I've never played the Last of Us video game series. I've watched my partner play it. I've never played it. I don't have much of a desire to play it, but I really love the TV show. So now all of a sudden, in TV and in film, you are introducing an audience that may never be interested in playing the game to a good storyline in a movie or a film, but the story, the storyline has to be there. You can't just, there have been movies made on video games in the past that have just not landed. And I think it's because they rested on the idea that, well, if you're a fan of the game, you'll go watch the movie. I think the studios are coming around to the idea that it takes a little bit more than that. And I was doing some research on Minecraft because, again, we're not familiar with Minecraft as a video game. And this may be putting it simplistically, but it just strikes me as the video game version of Legos. Like, the more I read about it, the more I'm like, well, we had those as a kid. They're called Legos, but this is just bringing that into the virtual world.
Okay, now,
so I'm glad they were able to turn that into a story.
Okay. The whole bit about Legos and movies, and God knows there are Lego movies, right?
Oh, yes, there are.
I was having a conversation with a guy last week who came from years at Electronic Arts, and he pointed out that they started developing something that actually my son invented 25 years ago. He is watching a wrestling match on TV. Mm-hmm. I think this was back when it was WWF. Not WWE, okay? And he is playing a WWF game on his Nintendo at the same time. He had 2 TV sets, okay?
Okay.
And he wanted to know what he was doing, and he was 8 at the time, what he was doing in the game wasn't showing up on the live TV show. Okay? A sort of a hybrid of influencing what the TV show does based on what you do. And so this fella said, well, they started playing around with that, but they didn't have the tools that we have now. Fact of the matter is, right now, with our ability to manufacture content, God knows we are doing it with artificial intelligence, and the fact that someone can be so targeted and personalized that what I am doing playing my game can influence the thing that I'm watching on TV at the same time. And if The Rock does the whatever the thing he does, or Steve Austin does the Stone Cold Stunner, I'm really dating myself with those guys, that you could actually have the gameplay influence the entertainment. And that might be so simplistic that everybody watching those, you can't do that. But the idea of hybridizing the experience, real time, of gameplay with video entertainment does make sense. It makes a huge amount of sense. And it's one of those things that I got to say, we've got the tools. God knows we've got the plumbing. We can make it all connect and get handshakes to each other 11 ways from Sunday. And I think we have the tools with AI to allow that kind of stuff to happen. And that gets really interesting as a business model.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're starting to see a little bit of the real world come into video games. It sounds like, what you're talking about is kind of the other direction, which hadn't really occurred to me, but that's an interesting concept. I'll tell you that with video games, the studios and the developers behind video games, especially sport-based video games,
Oh, yeah.
they take those really seriously. And I'll give you two quick examples. There's a great ESPN, very short documentary. I think you might be able to find it on YouTube, but if you have ESPN Plus, it's on there too, about the Madden scouts and how Madden sends scouts out to the games and they assign the players a different score that updates in real time during the season, and the players all know who these scouts are, and they go up to them constantly talking to them about their player score. And that's one example of how when you're spending $60 on a video game, you're really buying into something that now gets updated close to real time. And the same with NBA 2K. That's another video game series that we play. We're fans of our local basketball team, the Sacramento Kings, and we had a coaching change this season, and we had a couple of players get traded. And within about 2 weeks, those changes are reflected in the video game now. An update gets pushed out through the internet, and all of a sudden, Mike Brown's not our coach anymore. It's Doug Christie. All of a sudden, De'Aaron Fox is playing on the San Antonio Spurs, and we have DeMar DeRozan on our team, and we have I'm blanking on the Zach LaVine and Jake LaRavia. That's the other guy's name. Now you can play as all of these players on the Sacramento Kings, whereas a few months ago they were playing for other teams. So I think that the idea of taking the action in the video game, using AI to bring it to real life, we're already seeing that happen in reverse. And I think you're right. I think the next logical step is to the action that you take in the video game, being able to turn that into
what you're seeing.
Then all of a sudden the question becomes, how blurry is the line between reality, going back and watching those matches that Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock were in on, versus now using AI to generate those wrestling matches or the Super Bowl playoffs or the Super Bowl events or the NBA finals. The Kings have never won an NBA championship as the Sacramento Kings. They've never won a ring.
Yep.
So how crazy would it be to have the story mode where you're playing as the Kings, you go and you win the franchise, using AI to simulate those real players and make it look real? I have some reservations about how this plays out, not so much right now, but like 100 years from now, as historians are finding these things, all of a sudden it becomes really tough to tell.
Did the Sacramento Kings actually win? Or was it the video game simulation that Matt Keys was playing? My God.
That's right. And all it takes is one Wikipedia edit to turn fiction into reality, as we saw with this guy who invented the toaster. There's a great YouTube documentary about the guy who invented the toaster and how somebody put a fake Wikipedia page for the guy. And all of a sudden it got cited in academic papers. And these people who made a minor edit to Wikipedia had to say, we kind of BS'd that we don't actually know. I think it was the guy that invented the toaster. I might have those facts wrong.
Okay. But bottom line,
so moving on.
From my perspective with games and movies, if it keeps the audience, any individual player, and we're learning that the audience is not 7 million people, it's 7 million individuals, if it keeps them locked in to that experience, and there's some kind of advertising, some kind of monetization or subscription that benefits from them being locked in, I think we get there. And I think we get there sooner rather than later.
I think you're right.
All right.
And it's just a matter of, it's probably just a matter of the technology catching up. Really,
that's it.
Right?
That's it.
Yep.
All right. Now, you had one more thing and I had one more thing. Maybe they were the same thing.
No, I think they're the same thing. I think we were discussing in our pre-show. We are taping this. I believe today is the first day. Monday is the first day of NAB show.
Yep.
And I am confident. So by the time this goes out, it would be the second or third day. So I'm confident that a bunch of things in terms of federal deregulation efforts, which we've already started hearing about, but I'm confident these are going to get brought up in a lot of the conversations and the events that are happening at NAB show. And there was something that you flagged. I actually took last week off for vacation, including from the show. We were supposed to tape, but I had an internet issue. And so I didn't get around to this story, but Jeff Baumgartner at Light Reading has a story about how HC2 Broadcasting filed, I don't know if this is a petition or if this is just the informal comments with the FCC suggesting something to the effect of not fully winding down ATSC 1.0, but really pushing the idea of leveraging 5G networks for television broadcasting and transmission. So are you familiar more about
I am. Now,
about this,
first of all, if our audience isn't familiar with low power TV, it means the broadcast is at one end of my house and it extends about to the other end of my house.
to the other end, yeah.
About it. Okay. Very, very limited fencing geographic distribution opportunity. If you were HC2 Broadcast, who is, I believe, the largest owner of low power TV stations in the country, and they bought most of them for, we were kidding, $3 and a closet full of old TV guides. They're not worth that much, but they're a license. It's the license that's important. And having a broadcast license, if they can translate that into low power, which doesn't compete for bandwidth and doesn't compete with, the gigahertz, megahertz, single hertz, all the rest of the hertz. My shoulder hurts. I did too much work. It doesn't compete with those guys because it's low power. If they can jump up to 5G. Now, broadcast is sort of fighting 5G. They want to move to next gen TV, ATSC 3, and they have a lot invested in that, and a lot of time and a lot of lobbying and a lot of politics and a lot of financial standing invested in that. But ATSC 3 doesn't currently and is unlikely to ever effectively play on mobile. And there's business reasons and there's technology reasons. And then you have the gatekeepers who build the damn phones, who kind of say, nah, we don't need that. But 5G obviously plays on mobile. And so if a low power TV station with a license to reruns of Bonanza, it's the kind of stuff that they do, license to that content, if they can get on 5G, they can, within any given market, get to almost every single person who has a mobile device on either their phone or their tablet, and just bypass the whole big set in the living room. Let's go make some money with our signal. And I think it's a smart strategy. I don't think it replaces 5G, but I think as an alternative, and frankly, I will tell my friends at Sinclair when I talk to them next week, they ought to be looking at them both simultaneously. There's not a reason to do just one or the other. There's an expense, right? You build a 5G distribution platform versus an ATSC 3 distribution platform, or you make a good deal with Verizon, okay? You co-license your content streaming to Verizon and let them push it out onto 5G, and it's still branded as the TV station from Baltimore that you're watching, but it just bounces through another owner on the way and another bit of technology on the way to my eyeballs. I think it's a fascinating conversation. I think, frankly, it's one that we ought to have.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to this. And we've got a few minutes left here, so we can't unpack all of this in this episode. I do want to come back to this in a future episode, because this 5G, this broadcast over 5G, can take so many different paths. If you're just taking the existing TV signal and saying, well, we're going to use this for 5G data casting, and that's going to include video to some degree, but other things as well. To your point, the current consumer devices on the market today don't support the decoding of those 5G signals on the frequencies through which they're proposing. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean they won't always do that. And certainly if HC2, which is to be fair, and I've seen a lot of misreporting on this, is not advocating the end of free broadcast TV. That is not what they're doing here, although there are some marketing blogs and other trade publications that are suggesting they are. That's not what they're doing here. They're actually doing the opposite. They're saying this could help continue free broadcast TV. The problem is that there's no devices that support the frequencies through which they're proposing to use currently. That doesn't mean there won't be in the future. And certainly if this is a proposal that does gain momentum, so far they're the only ones that are really pushing this. But if others decide to come in on this idea, then I think you just need to look to what's going on with AM radio right now to see where things are headed. You have a big push by the commercial broadcasters to mandate AM radio tuners in vehicles.
Yep.
All of a sudden, you could have the same kind of mandate if, again, this starts to gain momentum on the mobile phone devices. We had this happen a few years ago where some of the commercial broadcasters were trying to push for Apple and Google to turn on the FM radio chips on their modems so that you could get free FM radio broadcasts. There's really no reason to not do that, although some of the chips technically don't support FM radio, even though the broadcasters say that they do. But it is something that they could offer in phones if there was a mandate. The Apple and Google have said, well, why would we do this? Because you can just stream your FM radio stations over LTE or 5G. They're going to say the same thing here. To your point, having Verizon be the carrier for broadcast signals, that makes sense to some degree. But over the existing network, not mandating that cellular modems all of a sudden support frequencies.
Just squeeze it down into what you got.
So do we now have the industry get together, again, assuming this gains momentum, do we now have the industry banding together saying, well, now this is the standard that's been approved. So Apple and Google, you need to support this frequency in your cellular modems. This is probably a really bad time to push that, given a lot of the geopolitical things that are happening with the economy and tariffs. But I do think that you need to look to the FM radio chip argument from a few years ago, the current AM radio push in vehicles. This could be the next step in that direction. And for the people in the audience that are saying, that's a far-fetched idea, it would never get to that point. Well, I just cited two examples where you do have regulatory pushes. And I'm sure if you told people that 10 years ago, the industry would be pushing for AM radio tuners in electric vehicles, nobody would take you seriously. Yeah. And yet it's happening. It's been reintroduced in this Congress. It's looking like it's going to pass. And the same thing could happen with mobile phones. Now, is that a good thing for consumers? Is it good that consumers get free TV on their phones?
Maybe. Why not?
I think it's good for the broadcasters. The consumers probably, would shrug at the idea unless they have to pay more. It's probably not very good news if you are somebody that has a streaming service that carries broadcast channels like the Fubos and the YouTube TVs of the world. But frankly, there's so much convenience with those streaming services that I don't think that this is going to be, hugely competitive. And right now it's only HC2 that's pushing for this. So, we'll have to see. We'll have to see where this goes. It's interesting.
We got to finish up. I just want to make one point. I believe at the moment, the largest amount of revenue that's coming to the ATSC 3.0 broadcasters is coming from selling their bandwidth. Okay? Because they don't have enough consumers out there with the devices charged up. So they got all the damn bandwidth. Let's sell the bandwidth. Who do you think buys the most bandwidth?
Oh, the mobile phone companies.
Telcos.
Hands down.
Okay.
Hands down.
So
and that's why they
there's
want. That's why they're
already
pushing for
deals
this.
in place that can be shifted over. Okay, well, guess what? You're going to buy some of our bandwidth. You're going to convert it to the 5G standard. Why don't you take my local broadcast station and put it out at the same time? And Verizon would say, pay me. But then, they're off to the races.
That's
Brain
right.
surgery, it's not, I think.
Yeah, the new generation of broadcast television, next gen TV over 5G, A lot of this is one and the same, right? It's the same idea. It's just executed in different ways, and that's going to be what does. There are going to be winners and losers in this race. I think that I don't know how much weight HC2 carries, although right now with the current FCC, it's pretty much a free for all. It's anybody can say anything, and it all depends on who's got Brennan's car's ear at any given moment. But we are moving to a world where the broadcasters are not pure play broadcasters. They are licensing their spectrum to the wireless carriers. They've got their hands,
they're media
in many different pools. And yeah, to be fair, from a business perspective, that's actually a really encouraging thing, because now they've diversified their company in a way that historically they haven't been able to. Yes, some of the regulations do have to ease up a bit before they can get there, and some of the standards do need to change. I think we're likely to see that happen within the next 5 to 10 years, and the broadcasters will be better off for it. The question is, will the consumers be better off for it? And we'll have to see.
All right. Well, guess what? We have finished today's show, this week's show, right. And we'll catch everybody again next week on the editor's desk. So thank you all very, very much.
All right. Bye.